Okay, well, let's stick with economic news and move on to Japan.
Okay, yeah, so we've got many things from Japan. We covered Japan about 2 weeks ago, and we were looking at the problems we're having in the bond markets. This is a follow-up from that. We see more problems coming out. We've got here, we've got the Japan Times saying that Japan has now got a record trade deficit. So Japan's got the biggest public debt in the world, 240% of GDP or something like this, by a country mile. But some things have always been, it's different for Japan because, and one of the things was it always ran a positive trade surplus. Well, not anymore. Record trade deficit, 19.97 trillion yen in 2022. This is obviously removing one of the things that was stabilizing the country. They also have a problem with the falling birth rate. Don't know if we've got a slide for this one, but sorry, just before we get on to interest rates, I think one slide was missed out. So there's an issue with the falling birth rate. So Kishida, the Prime Minister, warned that Japan's on the brink of social dysfunction due to its falling birth rate. The birth rate's 1.3 children per adult woman. 2.1 is the replacement rate. So this declining birth rate has caused a shrinking population, an aging population. So the Prime Minister is calling on policies aimed at facilitating child rearing, quote, the most cost-effective investment in the future, end quote. He vowed to create a children-first economy and society. So they are having to address a plummeting birth rate that they say, well, it's hampering long-term productivity growth, but it's hampering more than that. It's destabilizing the entire society. One of the other things that Japan's always been known for, despite all the borrowing and spending, is low inflation. Well, that might be ending too. Japan's core inflation hits a 41-year high. Now, it's still only 4%, so by British, American, European, let alone South American and African standards, it's very, very low, but it's still a 41-year high, so that's running up. And we have here the finance minister. He's warning that the finance situation in Japan is dire. As the Bank of Japan struggles to contain yields on Japan government bonds. So he's saying that the finances are becoming increasingly precarious. His name's Suzuki. He warned on Monday that the markets are testing the central bank to see if they can keep interest rates ultra low, because this is allowing the government to service its debt. So this is one of the issues here. With a 240% of GDP debt level, if the government started to have to pay significant interest on that debt, it would soak up a vast amount of taxation revenue, which wouldn't be available for anything else. He continues, Japan's public finances have increased in severity to an unprecedented degree, as we have compiled supplementary budgets to respond to coronavirus and similar issues. I think similar issues means preparation for war with China and responding to the war in Ukraine. Suzuki said in a policy session in Parliament, public finance is a cornerstone of the country's trust, he said. Interesting statement. We must secure fiscal space under normal circumstances to safeguard trust in Japan and people's livelihoods in time of emergency. So he's obviously anticipating an emergency, and he's saying the situation's very grim. But it then gets even more kind of bizarre because Prime Minister Kishida echoed Suzuki's resolve to revive the economy and tackle fiscal reform. He stressed the need for a positive cycle of growth led by corporate profits and private consumption. So this is Keynesianism. This is Keynesianism on steroids, which is Japan policy through and through. That what we have to do is stimulate demand to save the economy. He said, quote, wage hikes hold the key to a virtuous cycle. And he vowed to push labour reform to create a structure that allows sustainable wage growth to overcome the pain of rising living costs. First of all, he said, we need to realise wage growth that exceeds price increases. He added pledging to also boost childcare support and push investment in areas such as green digital transformation. So he's touching on all of the normal things, the green economy and all the rest of it. But unlike Britain, where the Bank of England's worried about wages pushing inflation and wage push inflation, the Japanese government ministers are actually trying to encourage and negotiate higher wage claims, because that will generate inflation and that will save the economy. Such is the belief in the Keynesian worldview of aggregates. And it's all about total spending, and there's nothing else to see here. And if we just spend enough money, everything will be fine. So this is reckless. On the subject of reckless, we've got the Financial Times here reporting that the Bank of Japan is easing the bond market with loans to the commercial banks. So unlike before, where they were loaning commercial banks 10% for 10 years at 0% interest rates, it's now variable rate. Now, it's a variable rate at 0.0145%, so it's almost free money, but it is variable, and they're lending money, they're printing money out of nothing, they're lending it to the banks, the commercial banks, and the commercial banks, it is expected, will buy Japan government bonds, thereby stabilising the bond market and allowing the Japanese government to go on financing itself. Of course, if the bond price goes down, the interest rate goes up, those banks will end up paying more in their variable rate loan than they will get in as a fixed rate coupon on the bonds they've bought, and all of the banking system will be in crisis immediately as a result. But this is fine. The commercial banks loved this. The whole idea was oversubscribed 3 times. They were queuing up to borrow money from the central bank at 0.145%. They couldn't wait. So we'll see how that will go. Now, I've been through all of these areas that show this strain is going. We've got a shrinking population, falling birth rate, record balance of trades deficit, 41-year high in inflation, desperate government finances, loans to commercial banks to shore up the government finances. So I was surprised to read the Japan Times. Japan's greatest export today is stability. As nations navigate chaotic global affairs, Japan stands out for its economic and social stability. As a reliable trading partner with a steady political system, its value as a dependable player will increase as fragmentation intensifies. Japan's wonderful. I thought, what planet are these people on? And then I got to the end of the article and I found out the article is part of the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, Davos 2023. So this shows not only how bad Japan is, but how utterly disconnected from reality Davos has become. They're no longer talking about real things. They're talking about the world as they wish it to be, not the world as it actually is.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, thank you, David. Okay, if you like what the UK column does, you would like to support us, please head over to community.ukcolumns.org. There are options to help us out there. You could pick something up at the UK Column shop, but please do share anything that you find on the various platforms. And David, just a couple of shout outs for some content on the website.
Yes, we've got an article here, an interview with John William Noble that I did on what state education is all about and his fight to create an actual school. So this is obviously of great interest, not least of which to everyone at Hope Sussex, who are actually doing home education and are looking for peace to do that. Here we see someone who's actually gone through the process of setting up a school formally, gone through all the hurdles and the hoops. And it's his story, not only as to how that's going, but why he felt that state education was so toxic that he could not in all good conscience allow his children and other children in his church and community to have to endure it.
Yep. And
secondly, we have here Rafi Farber, the coming dollar collapse and the role of gold and silver. A very entertaining interview with Rafi here, talking about all things precious metal and central bank and the nature of the world economy and why it's basically a bug looking for a windshield.
And finally,
I just want to remind people, there's a short speech by me called Ugly Building, Ugly Ideas and from Ugly Sources, all about what's coming out of Holyrood. That's relevant, as we'll see later in the news.
Okay, thank you, David.
Well, probably the ugly building is more relevant than we might think, because we're going to see some horror stories in buildings fairly